Hello, everyone, and welcome to Decoding Reality, a podcast about reality television and part of the Decoding TV network. I'm David Chen. I'm here today with Joy O'Napping. Joy, thanks for chatting with me today.
As usual, I would not be anywhere else.
On today's episode of the podcast, Decoding Reality, we are going to be discussing Love is Blind Season 4, Episode 9, 10, and 11. So, Love is Blind Season 4, Episodes 9, 10, and 11. You can find more episodes of this podcast at decodingreality.tv. Email us at decodingtv@gmail.com. Now, before we get into today's batch of episodes, we got a bunch of administrative stuff that we need to cover. The first thing is, I will say over the last few weeks, we have accumulated quite a number of people, mostly our friends who are listening to this podcast. 99% of the 3 people that listen to the show are people who know
Mm.
us or are
Is
connected to
that the
people who
kind
know
of
us.
math they taught you at Harvard?
Yes.
I think
And
we're at the tens of dozens of listeners.
yes, tens of dozens of listeners. We're very grateful for them. But I'm so thank you for joining us. There are probably 1 or 2 more episodes of Love is Blind, uh, Decoding Reality episodes that we're going to be recording over at decodingreality.tv. The next episode of the show will drop on April 14th. It will basically have the results of all the weddings. And then there is going to be a live special on April 16th on Sunday. Now, I believe prior to this point, the only internationally broadcast live special that Netflix has done is the Chris Rock comedy
I
special.
believe you are right. I believe you are right.
So they've decided to use that live technology on Chris Rock live comedy special and the Love is Blind reunion. This will be the second thing that they're doing. So, yeah. Go ahead, Joy.
Well, in Chris Rock's case, they wanted to make an event out of it, but that was material he had been doing previously. What I really appreciate about this is that this show and when it is shot and then aired, and then people's social media interactions with it, including the stars of the show, have gotten so confusing and asynchronous that it's actually nice to have a way to fold it all into one moment in time. I think last season of Love is Blind, season 3, we saw a reunion special, and then clearly the producers had time to go and like fetch footage of a scene about the cuties, the little oranges that
Mm-hmm.
Zenab and Cole remembered very differently and insert that into the program. And then, there was a different special, but it was filmed in some ways before the reunion. And so it all just feels like, yes, everybody, let's all be at the same moment in time in this story. And that
Mm-hmm.
moment is the present moment. Things are like really out of control. I feel like particularly the social media angle on this.
Indeed. Indeed. So the ideal thing would be for us to watch the last episode, do a recap, and then watch the live reunion and then do a recap. I don't know if we're gonna have time to do all that.
That's our
Might,
aspiration,
yeah, we may
but
just like loop it all into one episode, probably the night of or the day after the reunion. But that will probably be the last thing that we record on season 4. And we're really grateful for people for joining us for this journey over at decodingreality.tv. I want to mention, by the way, if you're listening to this and you want to support the podcasting that we do over at Decoding TV, you can actually become a paid member at decodingtv.com and support shows like Decoding Reality, Decoding TV, and A Cast of Kings.
yes, thank you to all the supporters. Your contributions have helped buy me a real microphone stand so that I don't have one that came for free, I later found out, and was falling over constantly. So thank you. It's already paying off in better audio quality.
Indeed, indeed. So thank you for everyone who's a paid member at decodingtv.com. Uh, the other thing is, Joy, at as of as when we're recording this, right? What's so funny?
Well, I'm just I'm not sure where you're headed next, but let's see what you have to
Well,
say.
there's a lot of spoilers out there for Love
Yes.
is Blind this season, right? Uh, People on Reddit have gone and looked up people's marriage licenses, and so they know whether or not people have got married. Uh, there's a lot of basically stuff that's happening around the show that's not in the show itself. We will not spoil anything about the marriages, but we will talk about other things that have happened extraneous to the show that are now like impacting the show or people's discussion of the show. Specifically, a bunch of people have come out on social media and apologized for stuff they said during the show. Some people have given interviews and done other stuff around their actions in the
Yeah.
show. So
I
we
don't
will be
consider
talk
it a
we will
spoiler.
be talking about that stuff, but we
Yeah.
will not be spoiling who gets married or not. Yeah. So I just want to
If the
clarify that.
cast speaks, like,
Yeah.
to me, that is not, quote, unquote, "a spoiler." But any, detective work that people are doing, I do consider a spoiler, or if, they're friends with someone or they shot a secret video off their balcony of 2 people making out on the street, like, that feels to me, 1, unverifiable, and 2, I mean, we're inches away from having deep fakes that could pull that off anyway, and really kind of, for me, outside of the spirit of what we're trying to do, also exhausting because there's just so much of that, like, speculative energy out there.
Yeah. Uh, So yeah, just letting people know like there's stuff out there on the internet. We're not going to spoil it, but we will be talking about some of the stuff that has come up.
And,
Uh,
the show was shot, I think the weddings were, like, in May of 2022, so it's been almost 11 months,
hmm
that
Yeah,
people are out there living potentially as married.
living their lives. I do want to say the cast, if and when they do PR or they do interviews, they do not reveal what has actually happened. So they're like,
Right.
I think they're media trained to like not give away spoilers, which is actually pretty impressive because they're
I should hope
regular
so.
people. They're regular people, So okay, now
Regular people know how to lie too, David.
one of the things that is really unfortunate, like the people who are paid members at decodingtv.com, like we're so grateful to them for making the Decoding TV network possible. But one of the things that has been severely underfunded at decodingtv.com, it's like really sad, is our fact checking department. In fact, our fact checking department consists of one person, me. And I have just been doing a really terrible job of fact checking what at Joyo Napping has been saying because a slew of inaccuracies has been dropped on the Decoding Reality podcast, and
Well, the fact checkers are the tens of dozens of listeners, and I think we heard from every single one of you.
we we heard from all of the listeners, or as they like to be called, Kevin and James. Who they're the two people that are actually listening to the podcast.
And Chris, don't forget
And
Chris.
yeah, Chris, that's right. But yeah, we've made some mistakes, and I would like to take the opportunity to
Yes.
clarify
Just
some of the
the
things that
time
have
for the corrections before we
right.
get into it. And Carol.
Yeah,
Also Carol.
Carol in the chat right now as we're broadcasting right now live at youtube.com/decodingtv. Uh, so the biggest one is at various times at Joyo Napping has alluded to the fact that Love Is Blind season 1 was filmed in Chicago. It was not filmed in Chicago. It was filmed in Atlanta. Now, the question was raised, has David Chen even watched Love Is Blind season 1? I have, you have not.
Yes, and that
Uh
is how I made the error. That is really my fault. I really felt pretty confident about that one too, so that one's bad.
yeah, and why did I not correct at Joyo Napping about the error is because I don't care enough about looking
Because you
up
think
where
Atlanta and Chicago look the same?
it's more like that was years ago when Love is, the beginning of the pandemic. Love is Blind season 1 launched at the beginning of the pandemic. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
I have
yeah.
lived an entire lifetime since then, so it's like I didn't feel like I had to go. I just assumed why would Joy say a wrong fact about Love is Blind
Yeah.
season 1? Why would she even bring that up unless she was sure? That's a very weird thing to say unless you're sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry about that. Love is Blind season 1 was shot in Atlanta. Okay. Um, Joy, I think you want to take the next couple of corrections because these are things that I
Uh
didn't assert, nor would I have, you know, yeah,
Oh, yes, okay, so then this one is also quite bad. I said that Washington State University, which is the alma mater of Shelby from Edmonds, is actually, north of Seattle, and it is not. It is quite a bit east of Seattle. I got it confused with a different university.
terrible.
It is really terrible. It is really terrible. And that shows the kind of sort of regional imperialism of the Seattle big city snobs, and I apologize to the people of Pullman, Washington. Nextly, is Micah really from Edmonds? Okay, look,
Yeah, we had
I
gotten
think
some
the
comments in the chat that Micah
people
went to school in Seattle, and then you were saying Micah's from here, Micah's from. I was just like, what are you even talking about? Okay, but anyway, go ahead. Go
okay,
ahead.
Micah is went to high school at a private school in Seattle, but I think that Micah's crew is an Edmonds crew. So, like, I don't it's not a 100% correction, it's more of like a question mark. You know, like in Super Mario where there's like the question mark box, like that is where is Micah's from is in the question mark box. Who knows
Hmm.
what you're gonna get if you hit that thing with your head. And then I also said this is my fourth correction of this episode. That the Earth's atmosphere is 71% nitrogen, and that is not true. It is 78%. Apologies to
That
all the
was your
nitrogen
gravest
breathers.
error. Your gravest error of all. You know.
And then, do you want to take the final one, or should I?
Uh, no, you can take it. Go ahead.
Man, screw you. So we were not clear on who Zach had the conversation with in the pods about the song "I Hope You Dance" and wanting it to be at his wedding. It turns out it was Zach and Bliss. We were all reminded of this during this set of episodes when Zach talks to his friend and says, I can't, they're all the signs. You know, we both are into the owls. We both love this song, "I Hope You Can Dance." The friend says, that is not a very common song. And I would
I
like to
hope you
fact check.
dance. I hope you dance is the name of the song. Let's not introduce more errors.
What did I call it?
You said I hope you can dance.
Oh, it's like, so you think you can dance.
Yeah.
I Hope You Can Dance is a really passive aggressive sounding name for a song.
Yep. Yep.
Anyway, I Hope You Dance. I would like to fact check that guy that it is an incredibly common song, particularly for weddings, particularly for first dances at weddings. But okay, fine. You know, I've it's time for me to go to Smith and eat a huge helping of crow.
Yeah. You know, the other thing I wanted to mention was not an error that we made, but I would say a grievous error that the show made. They edited it so that it seemed like Zach. The show edited Zach, so it seemed like he said, "Hey, Irina, I wrote a song for you," you know, and then he starts singing the song, and it's a song that is another song that already exists but with different lyrics. Well, Zach has, I
Irina,
think,
you take my blues away.
yeah,
That one?
Irina, you take my blues away, and then Zach has, I think, posted on TikTok that uh, he showed footage from the show that says that he like where it shows that he clearly explained to Irina, "Hey, this is not an original. I actually put new lyrics into the old song." So it was
Yes.
just the edit that did him wrong. And my guess is, uh, Zach saw he was getting dragged and went to the producer because the only way he could get that footage is through the producers. So like,
For sure. And I think even the producers might be in on trying to cleverly, you know, get in on some of these controversies to like drum up more PR for the show.
yeah.
But
So
yes,
Zach was done wrong in the edit. It was still extremely humiliating and embarrassing. Like, don't get me
yes.
wrong, he deserves to be shamed for that part. But
I think he did say it was one of the worst
yeah, it was. I think
moments
he
of
said
his
it was like
life.
the most embarrassing moment of his life, which is
Yeah.
appropriate, you know.
Yeah.
But it was with this. It's like 3%, 2% less embarrassing than it was before this information was revealed. So wanted to clarify that. But
Let's
go
get
ahead.
to other people's problems. I think that's enough airing of our flaws and
Yeah.
mistakes.
So
And
so
by
sorry
our,
for
I mean
all of the
mine.
terrible mistakes that the Decoding Reality podcast has made, mostly Joy's. But we're not the only one issuing mea culpas, are we, Joy?
We are
Um,
not. We are not. Some pretty spicy ones came out. Spicy and similar to each other.
so the big one is Irina posted an apology video on Instagram. And I have edited down the apology video to 1 minute, and I'm going to play a clip from the apology video. Here is the apology from Irina that she posted on Instagram.
The first thing I want to say is that I have privately apologized to the people that I have hurt and mistreated. And second of all, I wanted to say I'm so sorry for the people that watched the show that felt frustrated, angry, hurt by the way that I was mistreating people on the show. It was very immature and naive of me in a lot of those situations. And I just want to say that Zach, Bliss, Amber, Jackie, Micah, none of those people deserve to be treated the way that I treated them. Even Zach, like, he was so vulnerable with me, and I so mistreated him and shut him out. And I hope that one day I get to share my experience and what was kind of going on with me emotionally during that experience. But until then, I just appreciate you for watching this and listening to this, and thank you.
All right. That was Irina apologizing for her. Oh, shoot, did the same thing I did wrong yesterday. I pressed the wrong button. Okay. So what do you think, Joy? I do want to say that um, Carol says the beginning of this is plagiarized from Micah's apology.
Micah's
Carol,
apology, which we'll read, is quite similar,
yeah.
but maybe they had the same PR coaching.
I want to say that Irina is being completely dragged in the comments. She is not getting much sympathy at all in the
I
Instagram comments.
I really thought it might be 50-50, and
Right.
it was not even 99-1. It was 100-0 from what I could see, like the
Well,
volume of
yeah. I
vitriol.
I have some reflections on this just apology as a PR move. But Joy, why don't you share your reaction? Then I'll talk about like what I think about it.
I mean, it seems like a decent base minimal starting point. I hope she means it. She's a private person to some extent, like I don't really it's not my business to accept or not accept her apology, except that maybe she apologized to me, the one of the millions of viewers that was hurt and frustrated by the things she did. I was not that hurt or frustrated. I was mostly in shock. But I think when she says she hopes she gets a chance to explain what was going on with her emotionally, that does start to sound a little bit like a deflection, and I'm a
Well, it
little
sounds more like, "Hey, Simon and Schuster, are you interested in a tell-all of the thing?" Like,
Irina, my solo life.
yeah.
Yeah, I think um here's what I'll say, because I don't think we will necessarily come back to this. I was briefly a mean girl. Have we talked about this?
I don't know. I don't know. Go ahead.
I was very briefly a mean girl. I'm not proud of that. It was after my freshman or sophomore year of high school. I was in a summer camp and I was like one of the oldest kids. And then I became, not like a hardcore bully or like you can't sit at my table kind of mean girl, but I definitely probably threw my weight around a little bit. And I remember at the end of that summer feeling like, oh, that was icky. Like that was not nice of me. And so I wasn't a mean girl again after that. It was a short period of time. But I do think I can see getting caught up in it. I was also like 14 and not 26 or however old Irina is, but um I like to believe that there is maybe some chance that she could see all of this reflected back to herself and really be aghast and like really try to move forward from here.
Yeah, I have a bunch of different thoughts about this. On the one hand, I think in general, as a society, we are not good at accepting people's apologies. I have seen it happen over and over again. Someone does something wrong on the global stage or a national stage. They genuinely feel bad. They apologize, and then when you see it on Twitter, it's a barrage of hatred of like you. This is not genuine. You couldn't possibly feel bad. All this stuff about presuming to know what this person's life is and what they think, but they don't know the
Mhm.
person. And I think that we do this to feel better about ourselves. We like the royal we, not you and me, but like the royal we shame people because somebody does something that we think is terrible, and so we heap scorn upon them because it makes us feel like they are fundamentally a different type of person than me. I would never do that. And if I can shame them for doing that, then I will feel better about myself because I'm not that kind of person. They are categorically a different, more evil person than me. I, David Chen, think that is a very unhealthy impulse in our society. I think uh, there's very little empathy online. There's very little understanding of the person that there is like they're more often than not, they're just like you and me. And it's very unfortunate that people don't have a lot of empathy. Okay. So I want to start there. That's just a general comment. Having said that, I do think that this was and speaking from a PR perspective, because I have experience in PR from my work in corporations. I think this was a miscalculation.
Really?
Irina's apology lacked certain things that people are looking for in an apology.
Okay.
Here are some elements that I would argue were missing from Irina's apology. Number one, specificity. People like there to be specificity about the act in question. I am sorry that I did this. I said this. Instead, she's like, yeah, I'm sorry I hurt these people generally.
There's a time limit on TikTok and Instagram Reels, and she did so many fucking upsetting things. Like, she doesn't have time.
Yeah, but I think it could have been more specific than.
Okay.
I'm not saying identify literally every single terrible thing, but I'm saying maybe
I'm really sorry. I pulled up that blanket and kicked my feet in delight when someone came in crying.
Yeah, I mean, there were, now that you mention it, there are it is a series of terrible things that she, as I think back on it, it is a bunch of terrible things. The other thing that people usually look for is some explanation of why the bad thing occurred. Why did you do these things? She basically says it holds up a mirror and I basically now see that I was terrible. And it's like, really? So you needed to be filmed to understand.
I think she did.
But I understand why people are skeptical of that. That you really is literally the act of being filmed and broadcast to millions like that. You couldn't have pieced that together before that you were being a jerk. And if so,
I don't think so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, during my very brief stint as a mean girl, it feels great to be a mean girl. You feel very powerful and you feel in love with yourself and intoxicated, hot, drunk on high on your own supply. And I think anyone who's ever sort of gossiped a little meanly about somebody else knows what that feels like, right? So I think it's very, very possible if you're not terribly self-aware to start off with or really looking for self-criticism, or in her case, quite seemingly insecure and thin-skinned, that you wouldn't know. And then she just found out, it just aired very recently. It started airing 2+ weeks ago. And so the avalanche of shit that's probably come her way has, I'm sure, been head turning for her.
Yeah, clarifying. I can imagine that being clarifying.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that people usually include in one of these apologies is some specific course of action. Something that they're going to change. I'm going to rehab. I am going to counseling. I'm doing blah, blah, blah. Something that's this is how this is not going to happen again. Right. And so I would argue her apology was missing, amongst others, these critical elements that would have made it feel more sincere. And that is why, as a PR exercise, I think it was largely a failure. So
she's done some press, and I think she seems very insincere in that press. Let me just put it that way. That's how it comes across to me. So I actually think she's probably learned nothing. And the apology video doesn't mean anything to me because I don't feel that I need to be apologized to. So it's not my place to. I would never chime in on a comment. Do you know what I mean? On somebody's apology video, unless they're apologizing to me.
Yeah. Instead, we have our own little tiny corner over here on the internet where we can share our thoughts. Here at youtube.com/decodingtv and decodingreality.tv.
Okay, you want to move to Micah's apology?
Let's do it. I've put it on the screen. I'm going to read the. I was going to say I'm going to read the plot summary. I'm going to read the apology.
IMDb plot summary.
The apology in its entirety. Quote: a small note. I have apologized privately to the people that were hurt on the show by my hands. I would like to apologize publicly. An emotional immaturity was shown, and I will grow from it. To the viewers I've hurt, I'm sorry I've triggered so many of you with my behavior. Seeing that person on the screen would make me feel the same anger. As to my comments being off, I will turn them on in time. I'm doing my best to protect my mental health, deserve it or not. It has always been something I've struggled with, and I know I cannot be better. I cannot better myself if I'm more unwell mentally. I hope you understand that I'm taking accountability privately. I promise to do better in the future, end quote. That is Micah's apology that she posted on her Instagram channel. Any thoughts on this, Joy?
I mean, I have no reason to doubt the sincerity of anybody. I have a maximal benefit of the doubt that I try to give people in positive intent. I actually just don't even know what the fuck she's talking about. I literally don't know what she's apologizing for. So the specificity issues are even worse in this case to me.
I'm saying.
Because I'm are you apologizing because your friend Shelby was mean to Paul and you didn't take Paul's side? Or do you think that's like not a problem? And it's okay if you think it's not a problem. I just want to know what you're talking about so I
Yeah.
can follow you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But whatever. She seems to have really felt the need to say this. Um, and fine, she did.
Of all the apologies that have been issued, those were 2 of them.
Vague
That's
booking.
yeah. Okay. So that's some of the stuff that's happened. Marshall and Jackie have also said stuff to the press, but why don't we
Let's
talk
get
about that
into
when we
that
get to
when
that?
we
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right. So, Love is Blind, season 4, episodes 9, 10, and 11. Finally, half an hour into the podcast, we're getting to the actual conversation about the episodes. You wanted to talk a little bit about this show's depiction of Seattle.
Yes.
So, talk about it, Joy. What do you think?
There are some truly iconic Seattle things that we have not gotten. We have not gotten anybody throwing a fish at Pike Place Market. We have not gotten the hot tub on Lake Union that I thought we would. It's like a floating hot tub. People can do it as like friends or as a date. But overall, I feel like in this set of episodes, especially, we finally got the visual depiction of Seattle that I have been waiting for. For one thing, it finally rains, and that is a lot more accurate to what it's like here. And I think you get a sense of like what it's staggeringly beautiful in terms of the mountains and the lakes, and the city itself is sort of nestled against that backdrop. The places they've chosen to have as coffee shops or meeting spots are actually places I think represent the city pretty well and are a good
Yeah.
smorgasbord of what we have to offer. The wedding venue looks genuinely aspirational, and I think that's the first time in Love is Blind history that the wedding venue looks so good. um and I therefore was just truly shocked by this fucking slander from Kwame about Seattle.
And the slander that you're talking about is Kwame says Seattle's very expensive. I think he says it's like
He says
uh,
it's overrated.
it's overrated. It's like Lamar Odom quality for Michael Jordan prices, I think is what he was the words he used, right?
Those are the words he used. Yes, I've been thinking about them a lot. And so, it really sort of took my breath away when Kwame said that. Partly because he was coming from a backdrop where he was saying to, I think, his friends, like, in April, I like am running outdoors constantly. I'm playing soccer. Like that's my whole life in Portland. I won't be able to do that in Seattle. And I
Yeah.
am deeply confused because it is
It,
the same
it,
microclimate.
it is a complete nonsense. Out of many terrible things that Kwame has said, that is one of the silliest because yeah, he's like, in Portland, I can run around without my shirt on and blah blah blah, and implying that in Seattle you cannot do that. That is wrong. Portland and Seattle have almost identical weather. It is
Truly,
baffling.
like, to the point that I mean, for unrelated to decoding TV reasons, I recently interviewed a meteorologist who is based in Seattle, and he confirmed that for me. Now, it wasn't about Kwame, it was about something else. But yes, like Seattle and Portland are basically identical forecasts. And so I think it's very interesting that Kwame perceives these cities as so different from each other. They're politically very similar. They definitely have a little bit of a different vibe. And it is partly due to Seattle being more having like huge corporate headquarters like Starbucks, Microsoft, Amazon, Expedia. There are so many big employers for a city of this size and companies with global reach. Portland basically just has Nike in that category. And so for a long time, Portland was kind of grimier, artsier, hipper, younger. The joke about Portland is it's where the young go to retire. I think that's becoming less true because Portland is starting to get more expensive. So I do think Portland's a good bargain, and I do think in Portland the food is definitely better.
Yeah.
It really benefits from kind of having a lower cost of living, and therefore chefs can sort of afford to try things and take creative risks. The food truck scene is incredible, and I do envy that. But what really made me hurt inside when Kwame said it is he's not wrong that compared to Portland, Seattle is overpriced.
It's true.
But I think he is really wrong when he compares us to Lamar Odom.
In what sense, Joy?
Well, Lamar Odom is like, setting aside any Kardashian entanglements, like, as a basketball player is kinda like your utility player. I mean, he's very good and he's won a couple rings, but he's not a star, and I just think, like, I feel like what he's saying is true of Boise, but, like, it's not true of Seattle. Seattle is an actual city with actual charms, you know? So, um, no, it's not London, but, like, I still think it's kind of great, and so, yeah, I don't wanna live where whatever the city that Lamar Odom is. That is not a thing I want.
Okay. Well, yeah, he is right that Seattle is extremely overpriced. That I will give him, and
It's
uh,
become really
yeah,
overpriced,
it's
yeah.
it, it is really overpriced. So no argument there, but everything else was complete nonsense that he was saying. So
Well,
uh,
and it really highlighted this choice that the producers made to have people from other cities join. Like, if someone was cast in Dallas, but needed to move to New York City, the sticker shock alone is going to be a huge problem for them,
yeah,
um, in committing to the relationship because they're not going to be able to see how they can make it work. And I think Kwame clearly is like, oh, Chelsea wants like 3 children right away in this really expensive city. You can see like the doubts piling up, even above and beyond whether he's actually ready or really interested in marrying Chelsea. So I don't know. I feel like um I appreciate the show at least giving him the space to recognize, like, how Seattle is so expensive and how it highlights in some ways, like, the income inequality in the country, which is, like, a problem too. Like,
mm-hmm,
out of all the places this show has been filmed, Seattle is by far the most expensive.
mm-hmm. Trying to rolling back through
That's
my.
Atlanta, Chicago, and Dallas.
All right, really, Chicago? You think? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
I came from Chicago. It's more
yeah.
expensive than Chicago.
Okay. Anything else you want to mention about the Seattle stuff?
Oh, yes. So, I have this little thing in my heart that I'm hoping. So the movie Sleepless in Seattle did help popularize Seattle. It was not a hot destination for young tech workers when that movie came out. And then I don't know if you know that there was a Chinese movie
Mm-mm.
that came out that was kind of like a remake of Sleepless in Seattle. It was called Finding Mr. Right, and it was set in Seattle. And so Chinese people who watched it became interested in moving to Seattle, and it is credited in the mid 2010s with like part of our real estate boom was people who aspirationally wanted to move to Seattle after seeing this movie. So I'm hoping that Love is Blind will also get people to want to come visit, at least if not stay. What do you
All right.
think?
Yeah, I think so as well. There's like an explosion of articles about here's all the places they went to in Love Is Blind season 4. So, yeah. Peter in the chat says Love Is Blind in Denver would be interesting. I've heard
Hmm,
that's very lovely.
hmm.
I've heard Colorado's very interesting.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
In The
Um,
Sopranos, there was a line. I rewatched The Sopranos like last year. I rewatched The Sopranos, and there's a line in The Sopranos. I want to say season 4 or 5, where Tony Soprano says to Janice Soprano, his sister, "Did you ever know anybody that ever committed suicide?" And Janice says, "Plenty. I used to live in Seattle, Tony." And that was the popular concept of what Seattle was for a long time, I think, and to some degree still is. So anyway, just a
well,
random.
I do know Love is Blind is casting in DC, which hopefully will have a lower suicide rate, if not be quite as attractive.
Yeah. And you wanted to put
Um,
a question out to our
yes,
tens of listeners, right, Joey?
tens of dozens, yes. So, you know
Every location in Love Is Blind for dates and whatever has been identified. Uh, but there is one that we have, with potentially one exception, which we cannot figure out exactly where it is, right, Joy?
I have not seen it identified, and I actually went to some trouble to try to figure it out. I would like to know, where's the coffee shop where Jackie and Josh meet to get back together? Did a freeze frame. I looked at all of the accoutrement. I couldn't find any signage. It feels like it could be South Lake Union, feels like it could be Fremont. Um, and I saw there's bags of coffee. And because I know all the coffee roasters in Seattle, I know that packaging is Cafe Vita coffee now, which is also owned by our friend David. Um, and sorry, you
Wow.
can
Do,
timestamp that.
doing we're broadcasting live, Joy. We're doing this
I,
without a
I
net
do
here.
know that, but you can still edit later.
Mm.
Anyway, sorry to my mom. Um, The Cafe Vita packaging is very distinctive. So I know they serve Cafe Vita coffee, but it is not a Cafe Vita cafe because I went online and I looked in the interior of every single one, and they do not have that very distinctive leather bench seating. So if anyone knows where it is, that would really help me, you
All
know.
right, where did Jackie and Josh meet? I want to
Yes.
call out Jordan in the chat, who is apparently a 3-time patron of David Chen, a Filmcast patron, a David Chen Patreon patron, and I think a Decoding TV supporter as well. Jordan, thank you so much. Also, Jordan says, he says, as a Triple Threat patron, I'd like to request more joy on all channels. And he also says, on topic, I briefly worked with Cameron from season 1 in Atlanta and was in a few meetings with him. Super weird guy, gotta be honest.
Hmm.
Thank you for that reporting from the field. Also, Carol is a David Chen patron, and she seconds the request for more joy. So, just wanted to throw out those supporters. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you. Thanks for the kind words.
You
And
folks are
sorry,
awesome.
I come with lots of interruptions from my mom on the phone, so you have to decide if you
Yeah.
want that package
And
deal.
also fact checking needs as well. Very
Yes.
high maintenance from a fact checking perspective. Okay, so let's talk about the couples. Let's talk about the couples.
There's really only one giant thing to talk about, right? There's maybe one and a half things to talk about.
Yeah. So the big thing to talk about is, let's see, Jackie and Marshall, right?
Yeah.
Pretty incredible stuff. Pretty
Yes.
incredible stuff.
Yes.
So Jackie and Marshall, the relationship completely falls apart. Jackie goes to see Josh. Marshall goes to the wedding clothes shopping day thinking everything's gonna be okay. Is informed during the day of that Jackie is not at her corresponding session. And then we later find out, like, the show makes it seem like though she is at this Josh meeting instead of that. I think the timeline is a little bit less clear than that in reality. Um, but then they have a wild interaction where she tells him, "Hey, this is not gonna work," and then he asks for the ring back, and then she says no. Um, why did she say no? She says because you gave it to me and I accepted it, and and then Marshall, without even without missing a
Why do
beat,
you
is like,
deserve the money that you stole from the bank? Because I took it and you gave it to me.
without missing a beat, says, "Hey, um." You know what? I want you to keep that ring. I want you to every time you look at that ring, I want you to think about what you've missed. And then packs up his stuff and he leaves, and I don't think they're ever going to talk again.
I think that's right.
In fact, I think he gave an interview to Variety that was actually very nice, where he acknowledges that I don't think they've talked since then, but. The article is entitled "Love is Blind" star Marshall has no hard feelings about Jackie. Not everybody has the same level of emotional maturity, a quote him as saying. And
He acknowledges they have not talked or they have talked.
I don't think they've spoken, or they've spoken very little, is my sense. But
Right.
she says, "Does Jackie still have the ring?" He says, "I don't know." And then the question is asked, "But you haven't gotten it back?" No. I probably won't ever see that thing again. Have you spoken to her since that conversation that we saw on the show? No, Jackie and I have not spoken. So
Okay.
that
So
is what
this
has
is
happened.
all very, very, very messy because the show presents a certain timeline, which is largely what you just said. And then there are two other competing, possible, intersecting, confusing potential timelines. So I don't know that it even truly matters at the end of the day, but I'm just going to highlight quickly that Jackie has made an Instagram post and said that number one, she had that date with Josh where she accepts the flowers from him. She kisses him. He asks, "How's Marshall?" She's like, "I don't care what he thinks of this," at the coffee shop that I mentioned with the Cafe Vita coffee. That is shown before the breakup conversation in the edit. And she has said that that date actually took place after.
Yeah.
So
Now, it doesn't really matter that much because,
I don't think it matters, but I went
yeah.
back and I rewatched the scene where they broke up, and it is basically, she does say, "Marshall, I can't love you because I'm attracted to Josh, and I just saw Josh and there's some chemistry." It makes it seem like she literally just left the coffee shop, but I think that whole
Yeah.
conversation actually is referring to Chelsea's birthday party.
Mhm.
So the
Yeah.
producer shenanigans worked, it got them together. And, I remember the first time you and I recapped the first batch of episodes from the season, you were like, "Hey, I don't care what happens to all these side people." And I, just want to say the side people came back because, the producers inserted themselves and so this is how Jackie and Josh end up together. Um, I think that the other thing she said in her Instagram post is that the Marshall did not pay for the ring. The producers pay for the ring, or the
Yeah.
show pays for the ring.
Yeah.
Now, I don't really know what the etiquette is in this very rare situation. But I know it's a bad look. I know it's a bad look. It
Uh,
makes one seem insincere and maybe a little materialistic. What do you think, David?
well, first I wanna just acknowledge I wanna give a little bit more praise to Marshall. Like, I was very moved reading this interview with Marshall in Variety. The question is asked of Marshall, "A lot of fans have noted your emotional maturity, especially given you were 26 years old on the show. But in
Yeah.
your fight with Jackie, it seemed that she implied you were less of a man for being in touch with your emotions. What was your interpretation of that conversation?" Marshall says, quote, "First, I'd just like to backtrack. Jackie didn't verbatim say that I was less of a man. It was my interpretation of it. She very much put that she can't give me what I need as far as the emotional availability or rise to my emotional maturity. Not that she doesn't have that within her, but it just kind of paled in comparison. And that's okay. Not everyone has the same level of emotional maturity as we're talking about. I've heard that I'm soft my entire life, and that's okay. It took me a long time to get to the point of acceptance. I made a birthday video for myself, and I just speak to acceptance. That's my 27th year is just acceptance. I accept myself for exactly who I am. I'm unapologetic about my sensitivity, my emotions, and the fact that I wear my heart on my sleeve. I love myself, and I put myself out there, and that's all that I could ever truly ask for or hope for out of anybody, just to put it all out there." End quote. Getting like emotional reading it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's very it's clearly somebody who has not only a lot of maturity and understanding of themselves, but can look back on things that have happened to them and like recontextualize them in a way that makes sense and fits in with what he understands of the world, and understand that it doesn't reflect on his own value, which is something that is so difficult to do, right?
Well,
When
especially for men and
yeah,
especially for Black men, like, um, people form a shell partly because it's easier to walk through the world that way on some level. It may not be easier in the long run, but it's like it feels simpler, and you get that message a lot.
yeah. And okay, so I just want to props to
Well,
Marshall.
let me just say,
Yeah.
Marshall has done a lot of other interviews, and he is unfailingly gracious.
Yes.
When asked things like, "Are you upset with Jackie?" or "What do you think Jackie meant when she said this?" He'll say things like, "You should just ask her that." And he is really clearly, I think he's probably past it or at a place of
Yeah.
forgiveness. Also, she has clarified she does have the ring still, and she said she might bring it to the reunion.
Wow.
Yeah, but I think, like, what I find interesting is I recall some of their interactions in the pods. He wrote poetry and stuff, and she did seem to really appreciate the kind of person he was. I don't think anything changed in how he put himself out there, but I think she maybe just wasn't physically attracted to him, which can happen. Is love blind? I think what we've discovered is the answer is definitively no.
Correct.
Because
Correct.
Irina laid eyes on Zach and was like, "Oh, no, I'm only interested in Paul, who kind of superficially looks like Zach."
Yeah.
Whatever. And so I feel for him that he went through this heartbreak, but I think it is by far the best outcome for them not to be together. It
Yeah.
doesn't even feel like it was close or like a missed opportunity. I'm surprised that they made it through the pods. And then for her to pick Josh, who is like so diametrically opposite of Marshall, um, you know, Jacquelina says it herself on the way out of the breakup. She basically gives a little direct camera interview where she says, I think maybe I need to do some self-work. And I was like, yes, go do the self-work. That sounds great.
By the way, Carol is dropping some truth knowledge bombs on us. She's saying one website's claiming the Jackie Josh coffee shop is called Local Coffee Spot in Belltown.
I don't know her.
I lived in Belltown for many years. I don't recall a local coffee spot called Local
No,
Coffee
but
Spot.
some things have changed,
Yeah, things
for
have
sure in the
changed, but
pandemic,
yeah.
especially. So I will thank you. Thank you, Carol. We will
Yeah,
check
thanks for
that out.
that tip, Carol. Okay, on to my thoughts on the Marshall Jackie situation. First of all, like watching this whole Marshall Jackie situation play out and reading Marshall's interviews, to me it like really justified the enterprise of watching and talking about these shows at all. Because yes, the show edits things and very often misrepresents things, but fundamentally, we know the broad strokes of what happened, which is that Jackie, I think, behaved terribly towards Marshall, and he had to like put himself together afterwards and make sense of it. And we got to see that happen, and that's just like a valuable experience. That's a valuable thing for him to do. It's a valuable thing for us to be able to learn from it, and I'm grateful for that. So, yes, in many
I
seasons, Love Is Blind is terrible, but in this case, this is actually like a useful learning experience, I thought.
I think also it's a good learning experience to watch. Like, I think Jackie is probably doing the best she can to sit in her truth when she says stuff like, I really did feel something for you in the pods, but like it broke me when I came home and you wanted to talk about things and I was tired. And, like I think I don't think she's incredibly mature. I don't think, I do think she's
Yeah.
deflecting. I think she kind of et cetera. But like I think that is her trying her best to like come up with a story that is like understandable
Okay,
in
I
for
haven't
her
even
in that moment.
sure. I haven't even shared really my thoughts on it, so I'm about to get
Oh,
to that.
sorry. Sorry.
So I want to start by kind of reiterating that it's tough to be broadcast on national television in your 20s. A lot of these people are in their 20s. Micah, Irina, Jackie, they're all in their 20s. And if you had broadcast a lot of the stuff I did in my 20s to millions of people, like it would probably wouldn't have gone well. Like it just, people are still becoming adults and forming as people, and I do think there is some grace that should be shown to people who are in their 20s. I mean, you can question their judgment for appearing on the show. I think that's fine, but fundamentally, there are still pretty emotionally mature people that are still finding out who they are as people. Okay, so I'm going to start by saying that. That said, Jackie is the villain of Love Is Blind. She is by far the most reprehensible character that we've seen. Worse than Shane, worse than Shake, worse than Bartice from last season, in my opinion. Worse than Irina. And that's what's remarkable about this season of television is the villain was in front of you the entire time. Joy, are you there? Did I lose you? You still there? Joy?
Yeah,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
It did go weird and laggy, so I think you should cut out the
Okay.
last
Yeah.
bit.
You can hear me now, though, right? Everything's okay now?
Yep.
Okay. I think something's going a little bit haywire here, but I don't know what it is. The connection just did
Okay.
you start?
Is this better?
Yeah, it's okay now. Are you like downloading a bunch of torrents right now? Is that what's going on?
Yep, I'm just bit torrenting in the background over
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. It
I
seems
did
it
try
seems
to
to have
open a
recovered.
window, and I think that is
Okay. Yeah. Don't.
okay. Well, this is riveting. A
Yeah.
riveting
No.
listen. I know
No
for
opening
everyone.
windows, please. Max Jacobson says the take was so hot the feed melted just now. Okay. So yes, Jackie. Stealth villain for the whole episode. It's a remarkable season of reality television because the villain was in plain sight the whole time. It's like when you get to the end of a movie and it's like Kevin Spacey was Kaiser Soze the entire time. Jackie was the worst person that ever appeared on Love Is Blind the whole time, and we didn't even know it. Keeping the ring, like everything that happened with Josh, like what's amazing is we've seen that Josh is an incredibly terrible human being. They probably used the worst portions of him being drunk, but they were still pretty bad. Then for her to get together with him, that's already just like, wow, I can't believe you chose Josh over Marshall. But hey, different strokes for different folks. People have different tastes, whatever, that's fine. But then the decision to keep the ring, as you said, at best, it is a worst look, or it is a bad look, you know? And at worst, it just is like, it is mind blowing to me that someone would say that knowing they were being filmed, even if you really wanted to keep the ring, at least like lie about it and say you're not going to, and then have an argument off camera and keep the ring. Like, it just looks so terrible. So
What do
anyway,
you think the keeping the ring is about? Do you think it's literally like she's going to pawn it and
yes,
just
I
get
think it is
$2,000?
literally a monetary thing. I think it is literally a.
So
Uh,
fucking depressing. Yeah.
well, hey, she probably needs. We know she's strapped financially in a challenging family situation. It's not out of the question that she would need money, but that's just a very.
But that's not the reason she gives. I think Marshall could even support that reason.
Right. That's true. But in the
The
moment, she's
reason she
very.
gives is because I loved you when I said yes.
Because you offered it to me and I accepted it, I think is what is like something along the lines of
Yeah.
yeah. Carol says, I doubt she can contractually keep it on The Bachelor. If they don't stay married for a year, they have to return it, or at least that used to be the case. I think Carol is right about The Bachelor on that front. But who knows what contractually is the case. But yeah, it is the decision to keep everything until the decision to keep the ring. I was like, I was thinking to myself, hey, this is not nice, but it's understandable.
So
Right?
for you,
Everything,
this vaults her ahead of
yes,
Irina, Micah,
this
Shayna, anybody else who's Shane.
catapults her to the top of the Love
Shane.
is Blind villain list. And if you Google or if you search on Twitter for Love is Blind Jackie, I mean, she is being completely annihilated. There's no one even sympathetic to her in the comments. So
Yeah, actually the comments about her have gotten incredibly ugly. Like Irina was trashed, but like people didn't call her like so many ad hominem names. I'm actually uncomfortable with how hard people are going after
Mhm.
Jackie.
Okay. Well, I hope I didn't go too over the top just now.
I mean, I don't agree with your
Yeah.
take, but I understand where you came from. I will say, we do know someone who saw who the villain was the whole time, and that is our sister-in-law, JC. Do you
Mhm.
remember? She in our group text about this, she said, Irina, Micah, but I don't like Jackie either. Jackie's just as mean. And I thought,
Mm.
oh no, Jackie's great. Jackie's a
She saw
diamond
it
in the
coming.
rough.
She saw it coming. Yeah.
Jackie's a project. Yeah, I was wrong. Like Marshall, I was taken in.
Yeah. So rough stuff. I do agree with you that she clearly needs to work on herself, and she acknowledges that during the course of the conversation. So
Yeah,
that's
she
good.
says it a little offhandedly, but
Yeah, she
yeah.
says it kind of like in a state of duress, but it's a very odd thing. Um, but yeah, that's my assessment. People let us know if you agree or disagree. decodingtv@gmail.com is where you can share your thoughts. But it's
So can I was starting to lay out that there are like these alternate sources. So the show is one source. Another thing is this post she made. And can I just try to get into this leaked text thing?
Yeah, sure. Before you do that, Isabelli in the chat says, I heard on Deep D and Natalie's podcast. So Deep D and Natalie from last season have a podcast in which they are recapping this season of Love is Blind. That production allowed Natalie to keep her ring after saying no to Shane. So I think Love is Blind is a different animal than The Bachelor. But go ahead.
They made it all the way to the altar. Like
Yeah.
I'm very confused if I think Shayna had resources, but like if Jacquelina or anybody else like doesn't make it to the altar, like Irina and Zach, like is somebody on the hook for that, for them breaking up that early in the show?
All right.
Um,
So you want to get into the apology, or is that what you said?
no, the leaked texts.
Oh, the leaked text. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
This is really complicated, and I don't think I'm going to get into all of it. But the only reason I'm bringing this in is because it was hard to know if it was real or not. Is because Marshall has commented on it. But basically, there is a group text with Jackie and her friends. It is timestamped from last year when the show was filming. There's a shot of her and Josh together at I think they're at a Mariners game, and they basically, she says something like "my boo" or "my sweetie" or "my boyfriend," and I then she says, "Is anyone available to go dress shopping on May 3rd? Because we need to basically stretch out this engagement I have to Marshall for the cameras. So can any of you like show up and be my friends at this dress fitting?" Well, as we know, she never even makes it to the dress fitting.
Hmm.
So the timeline of like when was she actually with Josh? When was the breakup conversation? When was the dress shopping? When did they actually like how long did they keep some version of this going for the cameras? And then did the producers just like screw with that whole timeline in order to make the story make sense to the viewer? Like I think that is a question. Um the other thing she says in these texts is basically she insinuates that um, Marshall is gay or bi, and that she's like really not about it. And he has responded both directly and like indirectly to say he's not. But I think that is like pretty painful to me that Marshall is being called on to defend his masculinity. And to be clear, if you're bi, you're not less of a man. Like that is or you're gay, like it doesn't I don't know, I find that whole concept, like, very offensive to start off with, so I feel ultra pained that anybody would have to say, like, "Oh, if I'm" even if he is gay, that doesn't make him less of a man. You just
Yeah.
need to, like, address what you think a man is. I don't know, I just the whole thing I find, like, really upsetting, and it's really upsetting to me that she would talk that way about somebody behind their back, and to me, it's more offensive than The Ring.
Fair enough. There's many reasons to dislike this character.
But,
And
you and I have a dental cleaning tomorrow morning. What if Jackie's my dental assistant?
that's the thing. This is the thing that I said, what happens if we bump into Jackie at our dentist's office? Right? Like, that is a distinct possibility because she's a dental hygienist working in the Seattle area. I don't know, man. I'd have to find a new.
She is not touching my teeth. No. Because she'd probably get, like, all vindictive if she sensed bad energy coming off of me and, like, poke me on purpose.
Yeah.
She just seems a little bit unstable / not totally trustworthy, so, yeah.
Gustavo Garcia says it's pretty upsetting for the LGBTQ community to catch a stray because she can't handle her toxic personality. I would agree. Her behavior overall is pretty unacceptable. So,
Yeah, and I'm not even, like, getting into how she described it because I find it so fucking offensive that I don't even wanna give it any airtime, like,
okay.
the specific words. So, yeah. But elsewhere in the Love is Blind verse, Ayanna appeared on a podcast from season 2, the Natalie and Shane
Yeah.
season, Chicago. And the internet is ablaze with people who want Ayanna and Marshall to get together. 2 people that they think were really wronged by their partners on this show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she has sort of responded a little bit jokingly to it. So we'll see. I think he might be seeing someone else. Who knows? The world is big and Seattle and Chicago are far apart, but I do think spiritually these seem like 2 really kind people who deserve for something good to happen to them.
All right. Who should we talk about next, Joy?
Well, I think the most prominent storyline is Kwame and Chelsea.
Mm-hmm. This is the one where we see most of the wedding. We see Chelsea say yes, and we don't know what Kwame's response is because I think the producers know that we're probably going to be very doubtful of it. So,
Yes. So, I felt exhausted just thinking about this storyline. It is said several times in this batch of episodes that Chelsea is loud, and I think Chelsea even says about herself that she's loud. And I guess Kwame is also loud. And I just feel the clash of their personalities so intensely that like I don't think I'd want to spend I'm sure they're lovely, good people, but like I don't know. I find the idea of like there's one point at which Kwame goes to visit one side of her family at maybe it looks like kind of Mercer Island, somewhere on Lake Washington, maybe. And he's like, they're basically a bunch of Chelseas. And I was like, wow, being in a room with a bunch of Chelseas. Wow.
it seems like he's
So
kind of dying inside when he says that, but I can't, we can.
Well, and they have a lot of family time and they're very like affectionate with each other. There's just a lot of extra there, but it
Yeah.
does seem like warm and positive. There's just like a very large amount of it. Um, so yeah. A lot of fascinating moments. She tries to force feed him these chocolate covered strawberries that he doesn't want while they go shopping at DTE, which is a store I have shopped at. It's unfortunately extremely expensive.
Is that the one on
She
6th and Olive? It's that store, right?
Yeah, it's across from the flagship
Yeah.
Nordstrom.
I used to work like 2 blocks from there. So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They have a boudoir photo shoot across from the Amtrak station where I take the train sometimes. Did you notice that?
I dug that what I dug about that shoot is
Highlighter
bou
yellow underwear.
boudoir photography. Yeah, not the outfits I would have chosen, but boudoir photography is like you end up producing very cool sexy images, but very often the process of making them is not sexy. And I think that it really captured and you don't see the images, but like it's very much captured that hey, you could see this looking kind of awkward and weird in the creation process. So
Yeah, yeah. I was
and that
actually
was
where
cool. And
people could
Kwame was
see
game,
in.
and that's nice. That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And another, hard convo with his mom, that we don't really see all of. But we do get to see Chelsea praise his song as like the most beautiful song she's ever heard.
Are you okay?
I'm really not, because I just can't believe that Chelsea thinks that song was really, really great. Well, actually, I can't believe
I
it.
mean, you thought it was pretty good the first time you heard it, but I do want
Yes.
to read from supporter of the David Chen Arts, Stephen Miller, who writes at decodingtv.com. I have to thank David for calling out Kwame's horribly out of tune guitar in the pods. This was not your classic, oh, this guy lacks perfect pitch and or a digital tuner situation. This was nails on a chalkboard bad. That high E string could be used to strangle a puppy, and it still wouldn't be the worst crime it's committed. It boggles my mind that anyone who plays guitar, even the 3 or 4 chords Kwame uses, would strum that for a second before thinking, damn, I need to tune this before I continue, end quote. So, harsh words from Stephen Miller about Kwame's out of tune guitar.
Yes, yes. But now that I've heard it, I can't unhear it, now
No.
that you've pointed it out.
I will say
Um,
Kwame's family is like really cool. Like you see, his mom is not in the mix, but his sister is very sweet and very
his
nice, very
sister's
bubbly.
awesome, his
They're
brother
great.
seems great,
Yeah,
and they seem to understand, like, how to help him maybe navigate. I
yeah.
didn't realize his mom is his best friend. They say that, and that was, like, hard to believe he's gonna say yes knowing that. But, I just feel like Kwame, it feels like he's talking himself into this whole thing, like adding up like, okay, I'm gonna have to move, I'm gonna have to make new friends. She's not really understanding that that's a
Yeah.
sacrifice for me. My dad doesn't even know that I'm getting married, or it turns out eventually that his dad does, but like how the cost of all those things feels like it's adding up. And then I think it's at suit shopping. He basically, he says to like his friend, if one of us says no, that will be a very, very, very scary step back. And it feels almost like he's avoiding, out of fear. He doesn't want to have that happen. So then it's like, well, you just put one foot in front of the other, and next thing you know, you get married, which is, I think, probably not the right mindset for this show. But, you know,
I
Matt and
actually think
Colleen got married, so maybe Kwame and Chelsea will get married.
I think I have been exposed to the actual reality of what happens. So I think I know what actually happens in this case. Do you
What do you
have
mean you have been exposed? Like someone
I
came and flashed you?
I can't comment on it more than that, but do you have an opinion on whether or not Kwame says yes in the next episode?
I think Kwame should say no, but I think he might say yes. I
Okay.
really think he might say yes.
All right. Next up. Next couple.
Who do you want to go to next?
I mean, let's just say Brett and Tiffany, their life continues to be really awesome. That's it. I don't know that we really need to talk about it. Um,
I do
they do
want
take
to
a little
say,
they do take a little flight over Lake Union, which is very
yes, that
lovely.
seaplane date is quintessentially Seattle.
Yeah.
Chef's kiss. I did that as my first time as a tourist in Seattle, and that was really awesome. Um, I really loved that, she had a moment and he was comforting her and they continue to feel like just a really calm, aspirational, almost not good television kind of couple, but I appreciate that they're there for us to all learn from. And I actually thought it was interesting, she was saying like how frazzling it was to try to have this wedding go perfectly. And the wedding is supposed to be planned for you, but there's still a ton of like logistics of family and friends, some of whom are not going to be super even excited that you did this. And she's going to have bridesmaids. And I think that for her it feels like this is her wedding. She wants the wedding she would have wanted to have in terms of quality of outcome. And at the same time, she's saying, it's almost like I don't want a wedding. And I think they put that in there to provide some fake, drama for this storyline, which we all believe is headed toward them both saying yes. But I think that I really like that Tiffany wasn't necessarily about getting married. I really empathize with that and I just admire her for that. I loved meeting Brett's dad and
Yeah,
brother.
Brett's dad and his apparently they've not flown in decades, and they did for this, and that was very nice. They seem very sweet, you know.
I didn't Google this and I should, but I don't know if you know where they're from. That accent sounded so Louisiana to me. It sounded so much like the Bayou. Like I really miss Southern Louisiana. I think the voices, the accents are incredible. They're very like soothing to me. Like when I watch Treme or other pieces of culture set in New Orleans, I get very like homesick for that. So I was like, I could just listen to Brett's dad talk all day. So yeah, that was very, very charming.
All right, let's move on. We got Micah and Paul and Bliss and Zach left, so let's
Oh,
do Micah and Paul. How about that?
okay. So they meet up in that sort of alley of restaurants in Capitol Hill. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
got like the Italian place in the
yeah.
back and
I've
yeah,
been
but
there.
it's
Been
like
there. It's
yeah,
pretty
yeah, I
cool.
have two. It's changed over, so the restaurant name that they have now, I actually didn't recognize, but their storyline just feels the most because Paul again is the only quintessentially Seattle person on this show. Paul's storyline like feels the most Seattle to me. It feels really believable that they would go to that set of restaurants. It feels really believable that they would go make their own wedding rings at Lawless Forge. I feel like Paul would either want to make their own wedding rings or he would do what you did, which is he would prefer a silicone band because it like prevents ring avulsion.
Well, there is that point when Paul says, "Hey, like from a from a strategic risk perspective, or something like that." He's like, you know, getting married to this person would be the largest strategic risk I've ever taken in my life. Is very
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
analytical way of approaching it.
Another amazing detail, they're gonna spend time apart before the actual wedding so that they don't see each other on the wedding day. And he, of course, has that giant camping slash hiking backpack that everyone in this city has. It's like as tall as your torso. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Yep.
Micah would have like luggage and she'd have a matching wheeled luggage set. She does not have a camping backpack, is my guess. But we see that Shelby, the friend, goes to the dress shopping, but still is not really in. I mean, she's pretty snide about the. She basically says about Micah, well, this is what she wants right now, but we know how quickly things can change with her,
I saw some speculation that Shelley is actually in love with Micah, and that's why she was crying when she met Paul that week. But I think who knows about that? I think
I think you can have a possessive love that's not romantic, and
yeah,
it does seem possessive. Yeah.
yeah.
And Micah's mom shows up to the bridal fitting. She's a
Oh, and
little
there's a very sweet moment where her mom clearly has had health problems in the past,
yeah,
and she's saying
yeah.
like, "Hey, look, I'm here, I'm healthy, I can be with you," and
Yeah,
that
it
was
made
a
me
very
wonder if it was like a
yeah,
cancer, like a very yeah.
yeah, and that was very moving. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. She's not, super into Paul, it feels like, but okay. Maybe their interactions we've caught off camera and who knows if she'll come around. Often the families seem to kind of come around by wedding day-ish.
Hmm.
And, you know, uh Did you catch when Paul was sitting outside, like, there's an exterior, he's sitting outside an apartment? I think that might be his apartment. That looked like Queen Anne, and I really love everything about Paul's depiction. I think Paul gets kind of a bad rap online, but I like Paul. I think I'm in favor of Paul and his
Okay.
robotic version of love. Um, I well, this is a little bit speculative. I will just say it has come to my attention that I think Micah rents in Arizona a second apartment. So,
hmm
I
Micah
don't think
rents
she
a
owns
second
2
apartment in
houses.
Arizona. You're saying, yeah.
Yes, I think so. And I think it's not uncommon for people here to want to spend part of the winter in Arizona or California or Hawaii. Usually people don't have the resources to do it. So I don't know how she quite does it, but
Do we
yeah.
think Micah and Paul will say yes?
No, I do not.
Really? I think they're gonna say yes, but I think what's weird is because I don't think they would go through the whole rigmarole of let's not see each other. Anyway, Gustavo Garcia says, hearing Paul and Zach talk about relationships, it's like they're reenacting a Chat GPT generated therapy session. Here's what and also we didn't even talk about the scene where like Micah gets super drunk and with her friends, and it becomes the kind of quintessential drunk woman in her 20s, I think, in her sequence of the bachelorette party. Um, which whatever, people get drunk sometimes. It's kind of sad that the show is like airing all this footage because it does make Micah look pretty bad, I think, but it's not dignified.
Yeah.
But I guess what I would say is, hey, if they're happy, great. If they're happy together, great. There is nothing about these people that make me think they would be a good fit. That make me think that they are a good match for each other in any way at all. Um, in terms of physically, in terms of mentally, intellectually, emotionally, nothing, nothing.
I'm actually surprised they're as infatuated with each other and into each other as they are even now. But I really think Paul will say no.
If uh, if they say yes and it works, it's like, oh, this is a great kind of sign, or definitely a clear sign that it's possible to be happy with someone who outwardly it seems you have absolutely nothing at all in common with. And so I will grant it that, but I think that yeah, it's just I don't see it. I don't see why it would work on any level. Like I don't even think
Yeah.
they have like good chemistry with each other from what I can tell.
No,
So it's just
I
like
agree. I agree.
I don't even know what's going on here.
When he
I
describes
don't.
how she makes him feel, it sounds like, I mean, useful, but certainly not like let's get married levels of useful. So, yeah. Yeah.
But again, no one knows what's in another person's relationship. No one knows what people are getting or not getting out of people's relationships. So hard to judge sometimes. But anyway,
Yeah.
and finally, Bliss and Zach. All right. So the centerpieces of the Bliss and Zach interactions this episode, in this batch of episodes, are meeting Bliss's parents,
Separately, yeah.
Bliss's mom, and then separately, mom and her sisters, and then Bliss's father with her stepmom. And the visit with the mom goes pretty well.
Mhm.
But Zach has to then explain like the whole. I don't think he has to, but
Yeah,
I
he comes clean about it
he
being
comes
the
clean about
second
it, proposing to
engagement.
Irina first, and it's my soul exited my body during that scene. It was just so excruciatingly uncomfortable when he needs to tell them, "Hey, I proposed to another woman 8 days ago," or whatever it was.
Yeah,
Um,
and I haven't had time to process why I did that, Like, I think his
yeah,
answer to that today, 1 year
yeah,
later, is a lot better than it was
yeah,
11 months ago.
yeah. But then the mom like seems to come around by the end, and it's like, "I would be your mom too," and that's like very
That
moving.
was really moving because, Zach did
Yeah.
lose his mom and also was so worried about being accepted by parents in general. I also thought what really came through for me was that Zach's mom or Bliss's mom and sisters really, really are like care about Bliss, respect her choices, respect her judgment. Like it really felt like that. Um, it wasn't just a concern for, of course they have that, but also like a trust in her,
So then he meets Bliss's dad. That
which kind of
conversation
goes the opposite.
that conversation does not go as well. And what I love about that conversation is he doesn't even talk about the Irina situation because it's like
He never even gets there.
he doesn't even get there. Because can you imagine if Bliss's dad heard about the Irina situation? How kind of I mean, maybe he did tell her, but I find it hard to believe that they didn't include that footage. Um,
Yeah. Hey, David, are you into golf?
uh, absolutely, I am. You know,
Thank
I wish
Yes,
I was more into golf
yes.
than I
I
am.
knew you
Honestly,
were my kind of and fishing? You into fishing?
freaking love fishing. Freaking, it's
Yeah,
fat. I
yeah.
find it to be completely fascinating.
Oh, good. I am now going to talk a lot because I like to do that, and then I will think that you are like me. That's how the conversation should have.
That's hey, people out there who are meeting your significant other's parents, you don't need to lie. You just need to be a little bit more pliable, you know? Be like,
Just now, I mean, you did outright lie. Can I
"Did I?
offer an
Did I?"
interim lie? David,
Yes.
David, how is golf scored?
I know that's the one where if you have a higher score, it's bad.
What I would offer for people is when someone says, "Do you like golf?" and you are not into golf, but this is high stakes, you might soften the ground by saying, "Yeah, not as much as I'd like to be." Like I'm interested to learn more. Wish I could get out there more. You know.
By the way, I think that people shouldn't get speeding tickets.
Did you know that the Criminal Code of Washington State actually has the most common infraction that should actually be civil? And to be fair to Zach, that topic he raised is one that I would want to talk about. But Zach is not doing a good job of reading the room, and it really just comes
Yes.
across as just a fire hydrant.
A fire hydrant of what?
Just aimed at this guy who wants to talk about golf and fishing. It's like instead you get a fire hydrant of criminal code minutia.
I think fire hose is the word you're looking for, but yeah.
Oh, a fire
Um,
hydrant when the thing is,
yes.
unscrewed
Yeah.
like the kids in New York
Fire
City.
hose. Fire hose, I think. Yeah.
No, I
So
am referring to a hydrant. I know the difference between the hydrant and the hose. When you unscrew the thing, the
yeah,
water
yeah.
goes out and everybody yeah.
It's just the common idiom is like drinking from a fire hose. That's what people say, or you know.
Okay, it's a
So.
gusher. It's a gusher.
All right.
It's criminal and
So
civil code discussion.
yeah, that goes very badly. And Bliss's dad. Also, Carol says I was with the hydrant, so Carol's with you. Um,
Thank you, Carol.
Bliss's dad comes off as pretty terrible in the chat. I have to say, like in the edit, he comes off as very not open and understanding and
Well,
bitter. You know.
I think that Bliss's dad has every reason to be skeptical of the process. And it's
Absolutely.
fine if he just doesn't like Zach personally. Like Zach is not his kind of dude. Okay,
Right.
fine.
Right.
But what I found really painful was that he spoke to Bliss in a communication style that I found very belittling.
Mhm.
Like he would start a point and then she might like kind of jump in because she wanted to rush to defend herself, and then he'd say, "Okay, fine, now you're going to make me lose my train of thought." And I'm like, okay, like, do you, is that the important thing here? Like whether you keep your train of
Yeah.
thought, because I bet you can come back to, "I hate this guy and you shouldn't be doing this." And I felt like there was a lot of, I wouldn't even call it passive aggressive, but when you kind of mutter things under your breath or you kind of
Mhm.
don't say things very directly, like that troubles me. And what I found, the second thing I didn't care for was that he doesn't need to like Zach. Bliss needs to like Zach. And Bliss seems like a huge dork. Like in the best possible way. I think Bliss and Zach are just sort of these like nerdy, people who love to go on and on about logic, data, and minutia. And so I think it's like a failure for him to notice Bliss and like what makes her who she is. That I felt, you know, disappointed in that he like, I don't know who he would pick for her then, and he tells this weird story about how he fired this other guy that was seeing his daughter, and that led the daughter and the guy to run away and get married together. Like, there's just kind of an odd sort of controlling vibe there that I did not love.
Indeed. Do we think these people are going to make it?
I do. I've come around to yes on this one.
All right.
I don't think she cares what the dad thinks, and I think the
Yeah.
mom's yes is more important to her.
I'm going to say they don't actually get married in the next episode, but they are still together today. That's what I'm like. Like they kind of pull an SK Raven without the cheating situation, you know?
So, you know, my own instincts on this show, I second guess so badly because of SK and Raven. I was wrong about SK and Raven at kind of like every turn, like every time there was a batch of episodes, every time there was a reunion, you know, so I feel like, yes, there are tricks producers pull in the edit to make you think things are going to go one way or the other. But like even Raven was fooled, you know, like, so I feel bad for her. But, you know, I think I just can't tell who's acting, not acting, hiding secret relationships on the side, etc.
Agreed. And I think that's a great life lesson to learn. Also, Gustavo saying, "Boo, David, give love sight unseen a chance." I think I am. I'm saying they don't get married, but they're still like they're like, "Hey, it's too quick. We've only known each other for, or, you know, I've only met you for 12 days. Let's keep together but not get married right now." That's what I'm saying they conclude. So, those are my
We
thoughts.
shall see. Now, because there's been a pandemic and also our neighborhood that we live in is a little remote in some ways from the rest of the city. I have not been out and about in the past year, but I really am racking my brains trying to figure out, have I ever met any of these people? We mentioned last time we have had more people come to us with like connections. Now we have even more. As the days go by, we're learning about more folks who worked with, went to school with, know the boyfriend of, you know, et cetera. In general, the people that we know certainly didn't make the final. For the most part, we have one connection to someone in the final, and then the final 5 couples. Some of them like didn't even get any screen time at all. Like, was it Adam or Alex, like Kwame's friend from the pods, that showed up to the suit fitting, and I was like, "Who is this guy? We never even saw him before." But you know,
I
it
did like
is
we got
proving.
one of Zach's friends was an Asian dude, so we got some Asian male
Yes, Asian
representation on the show.
representation
Finally,
wasn't
yay!
creepy.
Yeah,
Yes.
yay!
I still think Wendy, the aerospace engineer who kickboxes, should get her own dating show. But you know, it's nice. I actually do feel, you know, that we're coming closer to sort of justice for Seattle representation, and it really feeling in our lives like these people weren't just like flown in from, you know, wherever else as cast.
Indeed. All right.
It's just the people we knew indirectly were not interesting enough, apparently, to make the final cut.
Indeed. Anything else you want to mention before we wrap up, Joy?
No, I mean, I think the prior seasons, 1 to 2 weddings out of 5 has felt like the average. So I would be surprised if we got above 2. And we think Brett and Tiffany are 1. So the question is just who is the other. I mean, maybe Jackie and Josh get married.
I think we're gonna get 3. Well, okay, no, I won't say anything. I won't say anything more. Okay, but I think it might be higher than 2.
3 out
I'll
of
put it
5
that.
is impossible
I
because
think
we only are down to 4.
Oh, that's true. That's true. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. If you are watching this live at youtube.com/decodingtv or twitch.tv/decodingtv, thanks so much for your comments. You can find more episodes of this podcast at decodingreality.tv. And a big thanks to all the folks over at decodingtv.com for making this podcast possible. We really appreciate it and hope you enjoy this show. But download the podcast version at decodingreality.tv. Decodingtv@gmail.com is where you can let us know about all
the
of your
grievous
thoughts.
errors that we've made this week.
We
And
doing a
also
lot of
your
heavy
thoughts.
lifting in that sentence. All right, and until next time, next week we'll be talking about the final episode as well as the reunion episode sometime in the next week or two. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for listening. We'll see you later. Goodbye.